Hi, this is Ted, and today I'm going to be talking about Ananias and Sapphira. I'm going to be talking about something that I think many people miss. And the reason I assume this is because I missed it for years and years. I never got this, and I'll tell you what I thought, and I will give you a better rendition of what happened to Ananias and Sapphira in their journey and their death. Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, and this is actually chapter 4 of the book of Acts. Joseph, whom the apostles called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. So evidently, he likes to encourage people. He's really good at it. And he sold a field he owned, so evidently he had money. He sold a field he owned, and he brought the money and put it all at the apostles' feet. Very interesting. Okay, now we're going to move on here and see what goes on as a result of that. Now a man named Ananias, together with his wife, Sapphira, also sold a piece of property. With his wife's full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for himself. But he brought the rest of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. You see, everything in the early church, everybody had everything in common. That meant possessions as well as everything. It was kind of a trial period of the early church, something that took place early on in the years just after Jesus. And it lasted, I don't know how long, months, perhaps a couple of years. It fell apart eventually with famine and with persecution, different reasons, but it did fall apart. But during this time period, everybody had everything together. It's kind of one big happy community. And a lot of times we'll see this with businesses, we'll see this with groups, that the early stages can be very, very exciting. And there's a lot of excitement that goes on with people and with the group. And that's exactly what's going on here. And they are giving money, a certain portion of their income that they got from selling the property, and laid it at the apostles' feet as well, just as Barnabas did. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and kept for yourself some of the money you received from the land? Now, he's not getting on his case about only giving him half, but saying that this is everything. So he's lying. And we're going to try to dig into why he's doing this, because that's going to be something that, well, is easy to miss. Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? After it was sold, wasn't that money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have lied just not only to human beings, but to God. When Ananias heard this, he fell down and he died. And great fear seized on all that heard what had happened. Then some young men came forward, wrapped up his body, and carried him and buried him. About 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. And Peter asked her, tell me, is this price that you and Ananias got for your land? And she says, yeah, that's the price. And Peter said to her, well, how could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out as well. At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. Then young men came and finding her dead, carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Great fear seized upon the whole church and all who heard of these events. So this news is getting out everywhere. Now the apostles performed many miracles. We're now focusing on the apostles. We saw Peter was the one who basically was talking to Ananias and Sapphira, and they died in front of Peter. And the apostles, we're focusing on the apostles, did many signs and wonders with the people. And all the believers used to meet together at Solomon's colonnade. And no one dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Now, when I first read this, and for many years it didn't even occur to me, but when I read this, I assumed they were talking about the Christians, but that's not true. In other words, that the people stopped joining the ranks of becoming Christian, because it says in verse 14, nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their number. So it's not talking about the Christian community. What are they avoiding? They're avoiding joining the apostles. Now we're going to find out that Barnabas joined the apostles because of his gift and because he was so good with encouraging and helping out others. They basically brought him into their community, embracing them. And likewise, eventually you will see that Paul will call Barnabas an apostle. So he becomes kind of one of them. And I think that's what Ananias and Sapphira were seeking to become. So even though Peter is looking and saying, you have lied against the Holy Spirit, the community is seeing something else. Don't try nasty ways to become an apostle, because it's going to backfire. And if it backfires, you're in big trouble. So no one dared to join that apostleship from that point on their own. I'm not going to get too much into the definition of apostleship and stuff like that. I just want to point out that that one verse says a lot. The community really believed, leave the apostles alone. Don't try to get up there and become buddy-buddy and become one of them, because it's going to go bad if you try. And that's what they saw the issue, whereby Peter just saw they lied against the Holy Spirit. So tell me what you think. And I'm going to add one other thing. Does this relate to today? You know, we're getting all these people in the New Apostolic Reformation talking about becoming apostles and talking about becoming prophets and all this kind of stuff. Are they doing what Ananias and Sapphira did? Maybe not so dishonestly. Some definitely dishonestly, but some without trying to be dishonest about it. But is it a warning to stay away from apostleship or not? Tell me what you think. This is Ted.